Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dig In podcast. This is Jess Gaedeke with Dig Insights. And today, I got to tell you, you're probably going to feel like you're listening in to like a night out on the town or some form of professional gossip sesh because I have a very old friend here today. So buckle up. We've got Lucienne Castillo, Senior Director, Consumer Insights and Strategy at Pabst Brewing Company, which I'm sure a lot of you know as the parent company of the beloved Pabst Blue Ribbon brand, but also brands like Jack Daniel's Country Cocktails, Lone Star, Rainier, Schlitz, which was one of my grandmother's favorites, Lucienne, I have to tell you that, and many more brands to come. So Lucienne, seriously thrilled that you're here. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jess. I feel like we need to have like a drink in hand. I should have brought a Pabst.
It's late enough for us. I think we could have made that happen for us, but maybe after. Maybe we'll cheers once we wrap up today. So let's start with you telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I've always been in insights roles, always been a very curious person. I started off my career actually at Bank of America. So I did small business banking coming out of college, had a math background, so jumped into Bank of America just because it was like, okay, it has numbers, we'll figure it out. You know, when you're young, you don't really know what you want to do. It was a great job, great company, but really not a great fit for me. So I started off in banking, ended up fortuitously meeting a gal, now one of my best friends, who worked at Nielsen. And she introduced me to the whole world of just measurement and what it means to collect data and understand people behind it. So I worked on the Nielsen side, local media, for a couple of years, which brought me to Los Angeles, one of the best times of my life, you know, living in La La Land in my 20s. It was great. And then shortly after, got recruited into Pabst in 2015. And I've been at Pabst ever since, but carrying on different roles at Pabst that I've really enjoyed, really insights heavy roles, but also worked on the brand teams for a little while. So jumped around in different positions, which really exposed me to different things, really gained the tool set that I needed to step into my most current role as the consumer insights lead in department at Pabst. So still been at Pabst, but really, really enjoying my role now at Consumer Insights.
Yeah, that's a great background, super diverse background that I think leads to a lot of interesting decision making that you can do now in your current role. And we are going to get into that. So thank you for sharing that. But first, just an impromptu question to get things going. Mm-hmm. What is your walk-up song?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I feel like it would have to be, I'm a very big like R&B type hip hop girl. Mm-hmm. I actually had a walk-up song recently because we had a company meeting and they said, you get a walk-up song. And I did Everyday People by Arrested Development. I don't know if you know this song. Yeah. But it's a really great, everybody kind of grooves to it and it's really positive vibes. And
totally.
That would have to be my walk-up song. What's yours?
It comes on. Oh gosh, I never get asked those questions. I'll answer it in a second. But that song comes up often on my 90s on 9 on Sirius XM. And it always gives me that vibe. Yeah. I got to say, my walk-up song since high school is AC/DC Back in Black. Part of it was we were the Hornets, and so our colors were black and gold, so the black theme worked. But that song hits. Like that song gets me so pumped up. And I'm coming in hot because I just got back from the Super Bowl. Lucienne, I think I told you that. I was at the Super Bowl on Sunday in Las Vegas watching my team lose. Yeah. So horrible. But anyway, we did play a lot of hype music that morning in our hotel room, and Back in Black was certainly there. But anyway, I'm back. I live to tell the tale. That's the important part. Enough about me. Let's get into your story. Let's dig in because our listeners, they really do crave inspiration from other leaders. And I think one of the best ways to inspire is to tell a story. So I am very excited to hear about this upcoming launch that you have been integral in helping bring to market. And that is Not Your Father's Hard Soda Pop. And I am super excited to hear the story. So tell me about how that idea originated, what inspired that idea, how did it come to be?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Not Your Father's Hard Soda Pop because honestly, it's a product and just idea that wrote itself. I can't say that it was anything new that inspired this because it is a brand that was launched in 2015 or launched nationally in 2015. So I hope you're familiar with it, a lot of people hopefully have heard of it because in 2015, it was like the craze in
Yeah.
the alcohol, or at least the beer space, largely because of Not Your Father's root beer,
Hmm.
which is just delicious. If you taste it, it's like a root beer, that alcoholic root beer that just tastes like root beer. You're like, what is the magic in it? So in 2015, it was the number one selling item. You couldn't keep it on shelves long enough. And that's actually also what brought me to Pabst, because at that time, everything was growing. It was a really exciting time, and it really was a pioneer in terms of the beyond beer space, right? So
Hmm.
at that time within beer, really craft beer was the biggest thing. So Not Your Father's root beer was really a pioneer, now looking at the beer aisle now. So
Hmm.
Not Your Father's root beer still exists, but it definitely took a little bit of a back seat. It kind of just, you know, kept going along with the Not Your Father's root beer brand. But it's been a few years now, and we recognize that it was time to really reinvigorate the brand and really the hard soda spot.
Hmm.
It started off with actually an idea to launch a better for you soda, largely because of the better for you sodas that are coming around. You just had mentioned the Super Bowl, and if you saw the commercials, there's Poppy,
Hmm.
we know that there's Olipop, and there's a lot of these alternative sodas that are coming out. And while I do see the need for that item, it's just that sodas in general are just huge in terms of not even the non-out soda space.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we knew that sodas have been around for forever. It's actually a really top selling category. And it just made sense to relook at that hard soda spot. So that's where the inspiration came from. It's just like looking at the opportunity of a brand that we used to have. We knew that it had much success in market when it launched, but there was a lot of learnings that we made along the way as well.
Hmm.
So knowing that soda is a relevant category, I don't know if you know this, but sodas in general are actually the number two selling drinks category,
I
only
can
second
believe
to
it.
beer.
Yeah. I
Yes,
can believe it.
everybody loves soda, all different ages. So when we started testing the concept, we didn't know if it was going to be under the Not Your Father's brand. We wanted to confirm that that was still the right brand to bring this product back in with. And through a lot of research and work, we found, the solutions which really drove us to Not Your Father's hard soda pop. So it really wrote itself just because people love sodas. It's right in our face. It's like not overcomplicating an
Hmm.
opportunity. It's just kind of staring at us in the face. It's something that we owned in the past, and we knew that we could refine and, you know, make some wrongs right that we had done in the past to make sure that we hit on the great opportunity that sodas are having in this moment.
Yeah, for sure. And you just said that, right some of the wrongs of the past. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, what were some of the biggest, I don't know if you'd call it failures, but some of the
Yeah.
biggest missteps in the root beer, execution that maybe you corrected this time around?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's not necessarily that we made mistakes. It's just that things that we could have validated more.
Mm.
I think Not Your Father's root beer was right. The liquid was delicious. The product was true to taste. The branding was also, great for the time. But what happened immediately after we launched root beer is we did a lot of innovations immediately after, a lot of extensions, because we were really excited about the success that the brand was having at the time.
Hmm. Sure.
But we didn't do a lot of validation in the process. Like if we launched a new flavor, not a lot of quality testing, making sure that the liquid was right, that people liked the taste. Were they flavors that were niche, or were they
Hmm.
flavors that would reach the masses and that were sessionable, or what we call like easy drinking? So it's just making sure that we launched in the right flavors, making sure that we launched with the right number of brands and extensions and flavors at the right time. So it's almost like we got too greedy
Yeah. Yeah.
and tried to do so too much. That did the reverse. So this time and this go around, we started from the ground up, right? So we did true ideation with consumers. We did it even to test whether or not the Not Your Father's brand had the right equity or not. We also
Hmm.
checked to see which flavors do people want to see. What were the true drivers of purchase that would interest somebody in a hard soda. Were people in a hard soda? We wanted to
Yeah.
validate that as well. So it's a lot of the asking the why behind to help validate some of the assumptions that we thought going in, but
Hmm.
also helped pivot some of the trajectory in terms of what the concept is today. So
Yeah.
not necessarily mistakes, it's just things that we didn't do
Yeah.
that we are doing now to make sure that we have durable innovation.
Yeah. Durable innovation is a phenomenal phrase. And I think that as we continue to hear about the story, I'd love to hear more about that. But I'm just struck by as well some of the discussion around flavors. So, one of the things that really strikes me about some modern branding strategies that I've seen is the role that nostalgia is playing. I see it as a consumer. I obviously see it in my professional life, and I'm into it. I'm just curious, did you tap into nostalgia, especially as you thought about the flavors that made sense for this not your father's hard soda?
Yes, we definitely did. And talking about nostalgia is definitely relevant for not only our Not Your Father's Hard Soda Pop brand, but Pabst is probably the
Oh
king
yeah.
and queen of nostalgia. So that's definitely a relevant topic for us, which I love. But yes, we did, because we know at the end of the day, there's a lot of brands out there. So we also want to drive a connection with consumers and have like a little bit of a consumer empathy, whether that's like, oh yeah, I love that flavor, or that reminds me of when I was young. Um, so nostalgia definitely played a part, but I would say it was more so making sure that we had the right flavors that brought both excitement, but also would be sure flavors that would drive repeat purchase and trial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we also considered, as we tested in the ages that the flavors spoke to, right? Because what
Mm-hmm.
we found was unique with hard soda and soda in general is that it really speaks to all ages.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you were younger and older, and as I mean, I'm sure you've seen and everybody's seen that, like younger LDA not drinking as much as the older in LDA. That's definitely true, but there's definitely an appetite. People are still drinking, even if you're like 21 and the 20, And so we found that the hard soda in particular really resonated with the legal drinking younger generation, which was
Mm-hmm.
exciting. So when we tested the flavors and made sure we built our turf, we wanted to make sure that it spoke both towards the all ages. So that's where with the flavors, you'll see we have the classic cola and the lemon lime, which really hit with the masses. But then we added the strawberry vanilla, which is still a flavor that we saw tested really well, but adds a little pop of excitement that one might not expect.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that we made sure across all the flavors, whether a classic or a new exciting flavor like strawberry vanilla, is that it was a flavor that, or a liquid, I hate calling it liquids, but a drink that you could drink the whole thing and you'd want another one, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's another issue within the beverage space, especially flavored malt beverage, is that great if you have somebody try it once, but if they can't drink it again, then you're not going to really have sustainable innovation. So yeah, that's another table stakes thing that we do now when we launch products and create develop products, is that we do in-home usage tests to make sure that we're not only sampling 3 ounce pours, but we're
Yeah.
making sure that a person can drink the whole can as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, the flavor strategy is extremely important within the variety pack that we did, and there was a lot of considerations into it,
Yeah.
to make sure that we had the right product in hand.
Yeah. You have to get that whole experience kind of validated, right? You have to, because if it's
Mhm.
not in the context, I believe in context. If it's not in context of how consumers are going to bring it into their lives, then you're missing a big part of the story. So you've mentioned a lot of the things that you kind of learned maybe from the root beer time and applied now to the hard soda pop. Are there any other new tools or frameworks or approaches that you leveraged?
Um, so not, I wouldn't say necessarily new for the industry, but I would say new practices that we were remiss to do in the past. So, talking to the consumers upfront, doing that ideation session, making sure there was a brand fit. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing new, but making sure that we were doing the fundamentals along the whole process, which
Yeah.
really makes everybody's lives easier. So at the end, the product really sells itself because you're being true to the consumer, which
Yeah.
is the most important part.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised at how many of your industry peers have the same situation, that sometimes it's like back to fundamentals, back to the basics. Let's make sure we're blocking and tackling and not just,
Mhm.
sprinting to market. So no, that's really good. So
Exactly.
it's launching in this spring. So what are some of the like launch plans? How will you measure success? What are you doing to get everyone excited about this?
Yeah, great question. So it's launching this spring. So March is when the sales to the retailer will start. Shipments will start going out in
Mhm.
March. But we are doing so. One part of our launch strategy is making sure that we launch in the right markets, right? So we want to kind of launch small. You call it's not a test market. It's more mainly we really want to go where Not Your Father's hard soda or Not Your Father's root beer really had its strength, and making sure that we know that the brand has a fit there and has a little bit of an equity, so that way we can really focus our efforts and do it right, and then
Okay.
expand out nationally next year. So it'll be a 9 market or 9 state launch to start, primarily in the North Central region, and then a couple states in the Northwest, so the Washington and Oregons. And yeah, so it's very much block and tackle, making sure that we launch it right. In the right states, and
Yeah.
of course with it we're having social media, making sure that we have the media launch plans, like the displays. So yeah, full 360 support on the brand, but just making sure that we test it right in the states that we're in, and then very much draw the excitement to launch it nationally.
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. I
Mhm.
can't wait to see it. You didn't mention one of my states, so I'm gonna have to go out of state to purchase this product
Yes.
during that initial, or maybe I can convince you to smuggle it across state lines for me. We didn't say that on the podcast. So this is an exciting launch. What's your biggest takeaway from this experience?
The biggest takeaway I have from this experience is all goes back to the consumer, right? It's just validating and making sure that you go in with an open mind, right? Because all of us, people often go in, especially when you come from the brand side, with what it's going to be, what brand, or not. And there was a lot of pivots that we made. So, like I said, going in, it was going to be a better for you soda. And that was the concept statement that we tested with. It was like a lower calorie, better for you soda. And quickly, the first thing that we learned, and it was glaring at us, was that consumers like soda should taste like a soda. I don't really understand how could it be a soda but be better for you. And I
Yeah.
definitely think that that's an opportunity. I think where the Ollipops and the Poppies are going is definitely an opportunity. But given how small hard soda still is in its infancy, it was very clear that we should start with a soda that tastes like soda,
Hmm.
because that's really what consumers expect from a soda. And it was still where the biggest authentic opportunity lied. So I think listening to your consumers, being in that consumer empathy piece, like just really putting yourself in that position and not overthinking it, right? Like just kind
Hmm.
of like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
a soda that tastes like soda. So we kind of rewrote the concept. And then, yeah, another learning was Not Your Father's. Like we weren't sure. We know we had a great brand in 2015, but this was also an opportunity to launch a new and exciting brand. What did people think of Not Your Father's? Not Your Father's as a brand name. And what we found, to our pleasant surprise, was that Not Your Father's had really positive brand sentiment.
Hmm.
And oftentimes when we asked the consumers, they didn't even know we were talking about Not Your Father's. We'd ask, like, name any hard soda brands that come to mind. Not Your Father's was often the most one mentioned. And when we
Hmm.
asked what they thought about them, they're like, yeah, we just don't see it on shelves anymore. Like, we don't see it as often as anymore. We'd be
Yeah.
totally interested in a hard soda, a Not Your Father's hard soda, but we just don't see it. So sometimes just listening to your consumers and humbling yourself and trying to put away your objectives, your opinions going in, will help with the process.
Yeah. There are many lessons in that last part of what you just said. I'm so glad that you were able to be part of that. And again, I'm excited to see it on shelves for sure. Well, let's turn to you as a leader. So you're a leader in your organization, you're a leader in our industry. I really have admired your points of view on innovation for a number of years. So I'd love to know, what's one of your either most controversial or maybe passionate opinions about the state of innovation today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think this comes top of mind just after Super Bowl, and of course, being aware of the ads and all the new products coming out, and just my world being in consumer insights and touching innovation. Part of it is that I think what's most controversial or that I'm most passionate about, innovation is important, and it makes up probably 85%, if not more, of my time. But I do think that there's a very fine balance between doing too much innovation. And especially in beverage, innovation is huge. I think it draws excitement. I think it drives new people and new news on the shelf. But I also find that the brands that do well are the ones that really own what they do well versus trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's what is it like was it master of none? Like, like what is the
Right. What
saying?
is that phrase? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, jacks of all trade, master of none. So that's like one lesson. It's like hard because obviously I support innovation and I work in that. But I think innovation, and I think you and I have talked about this in our past lives, but innovation doesn't necessarily need to be product driven. And I think it's something that a lot of people, at least that I'm surround myself with in the industry, just immediately goes to creating a new product. But sometimes innovation is most important within your core business. And I think the brands that are performing well in our industry are the ones that are supporting their core business the most and having success in their core business. So
Mhm.
sometimes brand health or the industry health, I feel like, is self-inflicted. Is that that
Yeah.
SNL skit when they had that hard seltzer skit on like all the brands coming out with a seltzer, and it's
Oh
like,
gosh.
well, it's
Yeah.
true. It's just like
Yeah.
everybody's trying to do everything. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I think innovate, but innovate smartly and try not to do too much where it starts to hurt yourself and also hurt the shelf.
Yeah, the category, right? Like it's just confusing the consumer at a certain point. Yeah,
Exactly.
I could definitely agree with what you're saying. Like I think some companies tend to focus so much on product innovation that they lose the opportunity to think about innovation as any change a brand is making with the intent to shift decisions in their favor. I mean, if you launch a new size pack or you create a new positioning statement or you have a new ad campaign, those are all innovations and they can all be grounded in your base brand that's trying to do something to influence consumer decisions. And so
Mhm.
we really define innovation quite broadly, and we think the most successful companies apply that type of thinking, and it's all about influencing the decisions that are going to result in your favor. So yeah, I agree
Yes.
with you, and I think that the category is an interesting one. I mean, crowded does not even begin to describe it, or fragmented, or any of those adjectives that you would use to describe that industry. So, especially in light of that, do you have any new tools or frameworks or things that you're, applying? And it could be going back to basics, or it could be something new. But I'm just curious, what is a company like Pabst or you as a
Mhm.
leader? What are some of the new things that you're trying?
Yeah. So I would say there's some really, let me think. So there's really like some fundamental things. And then of course there's things like AI, that like is hot. You can't have any conversation about talking about AI when you talk
Right.
about new news. Um, but I would say this year, because consumer insights at PAPS is somewhat newer, right? So my department's been around for little over 2 years, 2 years. So we are really building some of the fundamentals back in place,
Mhm.
which has been an extremely exciting time for myself, but also the organization. But what I found is that oftentimes, and this was something that my mentor actually, so I have to give a shout out to my mentor because he's brought this to my attention, and it's a really simple application, is that a lot of companies are victim to looking at two things or two actions, right? It's just taking information and immediately jumping it into action. So what's the information and what's the action that we're going to do from it?
Mm-hmm.
Or conversely, they know the action that they want to take or that they need or they think they need, and then they back into the information.
Right.
You're nodding because I'm sure
No,
you've been part of
I'm with
the
you.
situation.
Right.
So there's two simple steps in between that people often miss, or you think about, but you don't stop and take the time to actually do intentionally, which is asking, getting the understanding. So the why, right? So you're taking the information, then you need to apply what's the understanding of it? Like what's
Yeah.
why? And then from that, what's the insight? So what's the so what from that? Why is that important and why is that relevant? And sometimes it's not. And that's the thing. People always think because you have an information, there has to be an insight. And I think that's something that's so powerful too. Like not everything has to have this
Right.
unicorn insight. But first you need to then understand, is there an insight? And if there is, how then can that be applied, which will then drive the action? So it's really this like 4-box method that we often skip the in between because it's the hardest part, but it's also will unlock so much information and so much direction that will drive maybe in a different way, or it helps provide more color to the conversation and to the project and to the objective. And so we are practicing more of that at Pabst. So whether that is even small things like once a month we meet as a group and we take we have a specific objective, like go outside and buy a product that you didn't buy before or that jumps out to you, and then we all just talk about why did you pick this up.
Mm-hmm.
What is the why behind it, and from it unlocks so many things. Or if there's this very specific or simple question that comes up, or challenge that a salesperson has, like, oh, we need this in a bottle or we need this in a slim can, then if you ask why, because a lot of people are like, okay, well, let's go do it, or like, let's test
Right.
it. First, I ask why, like, what's the need for it? Like,
Yep.
it unlocks so much. So I think that that's a simple practice that doesn't cost any money. It just takes a little bit of time
Yeah.
and group think. And what it also does, not only unlocks a lot, but it also creates a great dynamic cross-functionally. So if you have this and you take the time with your counterparts, different departments, this is not just an insights thing. This is something that you work with your marketing team, your sales team, all different functions, and you work on it together collaboratively. It really creates a great dynamic, but also unlocks a lot of information that's within your fingertips and you had right here. You just didn't take the moment to stop and talk about it.
Right. So there again, there are about a dozen things that I hope people take away from that. But there's the cross-functional piece where you want to make sure you're getting outside of just the insights purview, right? You're tapping into other disciplines within the organization, but also taking the time to do that, because so many companies were just moving so fast all day long that we don't take the time to pause and be curious about things and kind of know that, hey, maybe we're going down an exploration where there's not going to be, the silver bullet at the end of this. It's just, we're going to learn and explore. So I think that's great. I'm glad that you do that. And I'm sure it's going to be core to how you guys continue to grow. That's fantastic.
Thanks.
And finally here, what's your hot take on either the beverage alcohol industry, RTD industry? Like there's a lot going on.
Hot take. I mean, I think a lot of people, or at least if you read a lot of the industry news, it's that alcoholic beverage in particular, is losing share. Fewer people are drinking, dry January. It's definitely true, but it's still big. So I think one thing that I've reminded myself, or even our CEO Paul, we talk about it often, is that beverage alcohol and beer in particular is a social vehicle to bring people together. And it really is. It's like, in terms of the category we play in, yes, it's beverage alcohol, yes, it's beer, but really we play in the social game. And I think that is a positive thing, especially in a world where there's so much screen time. Coming out of COVID, also the acceleration of technology, we are so much, screened on our phones. And what Bev Alc, and in particular beer, does is it brings people together, whether it's at your local watering hole or happy hour after work, and it gives you the time to gather together. And I think that that's something that will always exist, and I think that's something that we, and I say we, people working in the beverage and bev alc industry, often forget. So in terms of the hot take, yes, there's always this news about beer is losing share, alcohol is in decline, but it's still a big part of people's lives. And I do see it as a way of a positive take. So, but as we said, not too much innovation. We have to make sure that we do what we do right. Remember what it's all about, which really is, and which really drove my interest at Pabst, and why I love what I do, is that it's a fun category, and it is part of people's lives in different ways, celebrates people, brings people together. It's always brings positive light. So I guess that's my hot take, or just like kind of like my 2 cents on what's going on with the beverage industry and why I love working in beer.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And what better reason to like work, on behalf of a brand than to bring that togetherness? I think that's fantastic. I love it. And you are making me even more thirsty the more we're talking. So it's time to go to the final dig. This is all about you as a person, as a consumer. Feel free to take off your Pabst hat if you wish for a moment.
Yeah.
What's the last product or service that you bought on impulse?
The last product, okay, so this is a true one. I actually recently subscribed. I had never thought about doing this, but I'm a new mom-ish. So I have a 14-month-old, and I feel like my wardrobe needs a change, and I do not have the time. So I did actually subscribe to Stitch Fix, because it's something that I'm like, I'll just see. They also have that first box for free. I'm like, it's just convenient, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know if you've ever used it before, but I hear great things. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so I'm excited to receive my first box. I don't know, we'll see, but it's just basically something new. I don't have the time, but it also, I'm like, if somebody can pick something good for me, I'm here for it. So.
Yeah. And this, brands have very distinct personalities. So if you were to think of a brand that you would like to date and a brand that you would like to marry, and sometimes they could be the same brand, but not always.
That's such a good question. And one I will steal for like the next icebreaker. So, okay, I'm thinking the qualities that I like, or that I would, and I'd probably group it together because date and marry for me at this point. So qualities, consistent, something that's consistent, that you can trust, but also delivers some excitement. And you're going to laugh. But the only thing that comes to mind is Costco. And I know Costco is a company, but I
get really, that. I totally get that.
Because Costco, also I love Costco, but Costco, you know what you're getting, but there's always an element of surprise, right? There's always like a new item or a sample or something, but you know that Costco's kind of always got your back, you always end up spending more than you plan to, but they have really great options for good value and great customer service. So
I had not thought about Costco in that way, but you're so right. It hits on all of those elements. Consistent, right? Takes care of your necessities, but also allows you the opportunity to just spontaneously buy like a dog bed and
exactly. You're like, I didn't know I needed that, but that was like fun. Yeah. I'll try that.
That's awesome. So this has been a great conversation. I feel like I've already picked up on what inspires you in your field and in your work, but leave us with that thought. What keeps you sort of motivated every day?
I think what keeps me motivated every day, outside of obviously family and friends, that's table stakes, is work related are the people. I would say people is number one. I think people actually answers both, because the people I work with is what has kept me inspired, and what I love about my job, whether it's you know, even people that I've met along the way, but the people that I see and I work with day to day. We care about each other in that, and we care about the brands that we work for. We support each other, and making sure that I'm in a company that has a good company culture is what's kept me at Pabst, and what really thrives me, what really drives me. But then second is my curiosity. You know, I think, you know, once you lose your curiosity, like that's it, you know, that's it. You know, like how could I just have I love to ask the question why. My husband hates it. You know, I'm always like, why? Well, why? And he's like, you know, but that's always been my nature. And I love learning about people and learning about things and understanding what drives people. So I think in my role in my department, it's really the perfect place, because it's allows you to do both, you know, create both worlds. It's like I like to understand people, but I could still apply it in a way that earns a living and helps build brands, and, you know, is out on, you know, out in the world. But yeah, so my curiosity drives me, and the people I work with and meet is what inspires me. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I know that hopefully you get that, you know, kind of played back to you, because you really do just bring such an energy, such a positivity, and that curiosity serves you well in your insights profession, but also as a human being. So thanks for being you, and thank you for joining me today. This has been such a fun conversation, but filled with learnings and nuggets that I'm sure our listeners can take away. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here.
likewise, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. So we're gonna have our drink now.
Now it's time. We need cue
Our
the sounds,
cheers.
right? Like, yeah. Well, no, thanks everybody. Until next time, thanks for joining us on Dig In.